live your life, support your family where you can, but not carry everybody on your back. Otherwise, something's going to crash.
Hi, I'm Danielle, and welcome back to Making Space. Not just a podcast, but a place for honest, open conversations about where people have been and who they're becoming. I am so excited for today's episode because it's been a long time coming. My entire life, to be exact. The term eldest daughter syndrome kind of blew up online within the past few years and gave language to the reality faced by so many. In this episode, I'm joined by my two cousins, Amaka and Ekenem, who I've known for most of my life. Amaka has always been the big sister I never had and is now an amazing wife, mother, and pharmacist who always has me wondering how she's able to do it all. And my younger cousin Ekenem and I grew up joined at the hip. She's hilarious, wise beyond her years, and has always been the unofficial fourth sibling in my family. If this is your first time hearing the term, basically eldest daughter syndrome describes the unique pressures and responsibilities frequently placed on the oldest daughter in a family. Here are 8 common signs of eldest daughter syndrome from an NBC News article. 1, you have an intense feeling of responsibility. 2, you're an overachiever, type A, and very driven. 3, you worry a lot and probably have anxiety. 4, you struggle with people-pleasing behaviors. 5, you have a hard time placing and upholding boundaries. 6, you resent your siblings and family. 7, you struggle with feelings of guilt. And 8, you have a difficult time in your adult relationships. Okay, now that we're all on the same page, let's get into the conversation. What is something you have learned or that you're currently learning that you wish your younger self could have known?
Not to people please so much. I'm currently learning that. I feel like growing up, I cared a lot about what people thought of me. So I would form a personality for every single person I met that would be best for that friendship or family member or whatever. And it kind of made me go through this whole imposter syndrome towards the end of like my high school days where I realized I'm not forming any real connections with anybody because I don't feel like I'm myself. So it wasn't until like I found my
Mm.
real friend group at the end of high school that I was like, this is me. Like I like this me. So I was able to go into college and just be my natural self and learn that self instead of trying to curate all these new personalities for different people.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. I think for me, one thing that I wish I knew is that I don't have to say yes to everybody. Growing up, it was if you say no, you're not helping the next person and you're not providing enough of yourself. So as I got older, I'm like, the more that I say yes, the more I'm saying no to myself. I can't think about myself. I can't do things for myself. So now I'm like, okay, if this is something I can't do, it's a no. I'm not going to feel bad about it because at the
Mhm.
end of the day, I want my own mental well being. I want my own peace. And that has helped, especially now as I'm, a mom and I'm a wife. Saying no to those little things gives you that time back for yourself. So that's what I've learned thus far.
Kind of with that, like overall setting boundaries and like learning that just because you're setting a boundary doesn't mean you're a bad guy.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just interesting, y'all's responses, because part of the things of eldest daughter syndrome is one, struggling with people pleasing. That's like a big thing. And two,
Yes.
like having a hard time placing and upholding boundaries. So it's so interesting that you're looking back now and you're like, these are some key things that I wish I didn't do. And even now I'm still like trying to get over people pleasing, which is like a whole separate thing. So that's just so interesting. Okay, so how have y'all felt like eldest daughter syndrome manifested in your lives? I think it's cool that we're doing this because we all kind of had different experiences and like family structures and stuff like that. So,
Um, I think it made me mature faster than I should have.
hmm.
And so growing up, the people around me, I would look at them and be like, why are you so immature? But the reality is they were acting their age.
Oh,
Even when I started going to college, I'm like, why you want to go to a party? Like, shouldn't you be at home, watch TV or something? But then I realized I'm like 5 years ahead of my time because of being forced to be mature. having to kind of play second mommy.
Yeah.
And it really made me realize that I grew up so fast. That's what it's done. It can be good, Like for me, I got married young, good and bad, right? Because I got married at 22. But in my mind, I was already like 30. And
Yeah.
so I cut out those years of my 20s where I could have been learning new things and
Yeah.
learning life skills, but it was always next big thing, next big thing. And it wasn't until I got married and my husband was like, "You need to slow down. Everything is always, what can I achieve next? Why can't you just relax?" There
Mm,
was no relaxing. It was, what can I do next so that my mom can rest and have peace? And not, what can I do for me that's my age, that's age appropriate for me and that'll give me peace. And so that's what I'm still kind of struggling with, learning that it's okay to not have to be 5+ years older than you really are. It's okay to be your age and not
yeah.
be as advanced as everyone. It's okay. Just relax. So I struggle with it, especially now because I had kids younger, but I'm also realizing that I can't know everything and that people that are older than me, that have the houses, that have the cars they want, they're also 6 years older than me. Just because I got married earlier doesn't
Mm,
necessarily mean I need to be where they are because there's an age gap. So that's something I've struggled with, but it's getting better.
yeah. And you were the oldest of
Yeah.
three. So it was kind of built in to
Mm-hmm.
your life.
Absolutely.
And I feel like for me, it's definitely an overachiever thing. I could see that as a pro and a con in itself. Like, yes, I feel like I've had a lot of achievements, but I feel like, I don't know, there was a point in my life I felt like I was doing it a lot for other people and less of me until one day I started achieving more stuff I like. But with that sense, I kind of felt like no one really cared about my mental health or anything that was going on beyond like
Right.
academic or like athletic achievement. So
Yep.
Mm,
a lot of the like issues within my family for me per se was I had a lot going on all the time outside of my academics. So anytime I try to bring it up, it was almost like I couldn't.
You
And
couldn't. Yeah.
I had to be this like perfect thing. Like I'm not the oldest child.
mm,
Like Amaka, like I have a half brother, but he wasn't raised in our household. So it was just me in my household majority of my life. So I was seen as like
yeah.
the first thing, everything in America wise. So my parents put this
Mm-hmm.
like pressure on me to like be the best of the best to like carry out this family name from like
Of course.
age 7. Like I like
Yes.
I I can proudly say at the young, ripe age of 8, I wanted to be a doctor. I'm pretty sure I wish I said princess or president or something
Absolutely.
like it was already doctor then, and I'm still
Yeah.
pursuing to be a doctor now. And it's just like that overachiever pressure. It's just been stuck in my head for so long, and I'm just kind of trying to deal with that. Like I'm not allowed to take a break, and I have to like give
Yes.
myself breaks and tell myself there are people taking gap years, and I have to like tell myself if I
Yes.
do, I can.
Hmm.
It's just like always that fear of like I don't want to disappoint someone because I already created this overachiever thing for my family, so now I'm doing it throughout life to be the best. So it's like I don't know.
That brings up a huge point. So before, I wanted to go to medical school. I decided to go to pharmacy school instead. Not because, oh, I didn't feel like I could achieve it, but pharmacy school just aligned with what I wanted in life more. And I found that in sophomore year. When I tell you, my mom was ready to just lie on the floor and roll, you know? And I'm like, Mom, this is what I want. And it's like that constant pressure of, what are you showing your siblings? What are you going to show them that you can just, if you want to go and dance, you can dance? Like it was never
Girl, this
okay, follow
dancing
your
versus
dreams.
pharmacy is
Yes,
crazy.
I am telling you. And, like they're not even on the same level. And not to say dancing isn't bad. And as I've gotten older, I'd rather you do what you love than for you to do something because your parents told you and you're bitter and you're
Yeah.
angry.
Mm,
Thank God I love pharmacy. But had I just gone to medical school because of that pressure, I wouldn't be happy. Pharmacy provides everything that I would want in terms of that work life balance. And man, it is so hard with that pressure. It's better because now I'm like, Mom, no, I'm just, this is what I'm going to do because it's better for me. So take it or leave it. Like I told her the other day, I was like, you see this diploma you're holding? That's the last. There's no more school. Everything else is about me. Because when you get so wrapped up in what they want and overachieving, how can you think about yourself? And another thing that I realized is nobody cares what sibling number 2 or number 3 does. Okay, as long as my Ada has made sure she's crossed off the check marks. In fact, if you people want to work in a bar, that's your business. That's your business because nobody asks questions after the first child. So I'm just learning that,
Yeah.
and giving myself that grace. And also my mom, because that's how she was raised. She's
Mhm.
also the firstborn and only girl as well
Mm,
of the four. So I'm healing. That's what I'll say. I am healing actively.
I
yeah.
hope I heal one day as well.
You will. It comes. You will. I know.
And it's a process. I think it's just so interesting because what you said at first, Amaka, about like being the second mommy, like the idea of being the second mother. And it's like, I don't know, when you're told that, it's like supposed to be maybe like an honor or like a title that you're supposed to cherish and hold. But actually, in some ways, it's like really toxic. And I don't want to like use that word too strongly, but it's like putting this pressure and this responsibility and this title on you that is
Hmm.
not what you are. Like in reality, you are a child. You are a
Just
sibling
like everybody
just like
else.
them,
Yep.
but you're given, this level of responsibility, which like to some extent it makes sense. If you have younger siblings, it makes sense that maybe you step in more to help with other things, et cetera, et cetera. But once you're giving the child of like you're their second mother, it's like what are you have parents. So who are they? Like why do
Exactly.
you need three parents? You don't.
Hmm.
So I can definitely relate to that. And I think also being like the middle child, but the only girl, it was kind of interesting because you kind of have middle child syndrome mixing in to that because middle children, I think a part of it is like you're very independent and it's kind of like I'm responsible for everything regarding me. Kind of what you were saying, Ekenem, about like overachieving. Like I want to do well because then my parents won't have to worry about me. Like I
Yep.
want to excel. Like I need to figure out what I'm doing with my life. I need to have like a clear plan. I don't want to bring up my problems because they're already dealing with other problems with my
Yeah.
siblings. And so like if I bring up my problems, then it's just too much. So like I need to carry that all on my own. And you just put all these expectations and pressure on yourself that maybe it's not coming from your parents, but you just have kind of internalized this idea of who you're supposed to be, and it's
Hmm.
kind of hard to break out of that, especially when you're younger and you don't even like know how to talk about these kind of things.
Yeah. No, I really agreed with you said on that because once I entered college in 2020, it really showed me people that are here for a good time and who's
Hello.
actually here to get an education very quickly. And
Absolutely.
I didn't realize at the time, I don't know if it played into a role of me being eldest daughter. I don't know if it played into a role of what high school I went to. Actually, I don't even think high school played a role in it. I think it's just the way I was raised of like having to be not perfect, but at least have some sense and have the way I was raised go into college because I too like to go to a party. But I still know at the end of the day, my test is next week on Monday. So
Right.
why would you stay at the party from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. when I left at 12?
Yep.
They left at 4. And it's just one of those things where it's like I matured very fast. And I also feel like it's because I hung out with all of my oldest cousins too. So that's on to me
Right.
as well. But it's just like, I don't know, I came into college and I felt like I was always years ahead of other people mindset wise. And then there would be constantly people trying to tell me, like, you need to slow down, you need to chill out. I'm like, chill out.
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to
Child,
be
me.
I'm trying to be a doctor. I can start now.
Right.
That's right now, freshman year. And then it's just like weird because there's like other people that are in a more chill state than I am, and we're going the same path. And it's just that constant, like, my mind is everywhere.
Yes.
I kind of envy people that aren't as hectic mind wise. And I don't know.
Let me speak on that. I just graduated pharmacy school, and I remember my husband saying it's going to be a transition, and I didn't believe him. But you go from every day doing something, doing something. When I graduated, I would just be sitting there looking at the wall. So this is what people do that they're not in school, because you get so used to this is fast paced life, and okay, the
Yeah.
next test, okay, get an A, okay, join this organization and get the scholarship, and go to work. Then you have like moments where you just don't have to do anything and your mind is spiraling. I could be doing this. I could be doing that. And then that guilt creeps in because you're resting. That's
Yeah.
something that I'm
Hmm.
really working on because, like, rest is necessary, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Why should I feel guilty about it? But that's how we've had it ingrained in our mind that if we're not putting to work or going to work or getting something done, then we're of no use. You're not helping me. So why are you here? You know? So
Hmm.
I'm trying to overcome that. Like today, I had this long list of things I wanted to do for this holiday. I didn't get to it, but I'm like, but I rested. That's still a plus.
That's
And
Yeah.
just being able to give yourself those opportunities to really heal from things that you couldn't as a child. And that's why what we're talking about is so important because how many times are you going to sit there and have a conversation about being the eldest daughter? If I even tell my mom, she's like, Amaka, I tried as a mother. You know, like, there's only so much I can do. I love my mom, and we've had those hearts to hearts, but I
Yeah.
think one thing I've learned as I've read more and more is we can't blame our parents all the way. This is how they were raised. And the
Yeah.
way that somebody is raised is the way that they raise their children until somebody comes in and they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so now it's our job, our responsibility to tell our mothers, okay, this is where you went wrong. How do we fix this so that I'm not 50 years old and I'm still mad at you and I'm still angry at you. So I really want us to think about that path to healing, that path to recovery. Because it's important. That's how we heal so that when we get married and we have our kids and we have a daughter someday, we don't translate
Yeah.
that same trauma to our child.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like what you also kind of brought up is reminding me of the fact that I think there's an added layer to it when you're also like a child of immigrants,
Mhm.
because that comes along with so much. Obviously, you realize like your parents are sacrificing so much for you and they want you to be successful. And then it can be easy, like you were saying, to just attach your worth to your achievements or your success or like how much you're doing, your productivity. And you struggle with rest, but you don't realize at the same time the years you're losing. You've all been talking about being mature. And in some ways, it's a compliment. If people are like, oh,
Mhm.
you're so mature, like you take it as a compliment. But in reality, you're like, I will never be 20 again. So if
Right.
I'm 20, but I'm acting like 26, all good and well, but I'm going to be 26 one day and then I'm going to still
Exactly.
have to be that age. You know, so like at the end of the day, I'm just missing out on like experiencing development in the ways that other people do. But it's hard to think about that because you're also like, I'm supposed to be this like success story. Like like I'm supposed to make my parents proud. And they are proud and like we know they're proud, but I don't know, something about it is just ingrained in you. And even just like Nigerian culture aside from that, I feel like there's so much expectations and duties placed on women, and which is why like eldest daughter syndrome exists as the daughter who you're supposed to be in the home, you're supposed to be in the family, like how you're supposed to be preparing yourself for marriage, quote unquote, etc. And it's like I did not see this placed on my brothers. So it seems unfair to me. But back to the point of just like how did being Nigerian American and that cultural aspect impact your experiences of eldest daughter syndrome? Because I think another part that's kind of like more of psychological is I felt like I had this emotional burden on me as well, which maybe goes to the point of being like the third parent is like once you're viewed in that way, you have more of an emotional role in your parents' life, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Like you are confided in more for things. And like to some extent, it makes sense because you are like all in this family together. But then it's like, at what point is this no longer healthy or
Right.
like normal?
I know, like, for me, like I was saying earlier, I was raised almost like I was the only child in the house. So my parents saw me as the first American, first one in the family going
Yeah.
into like elementary, middle school, high school, all of that. So I felt like I was very hyper independent because I had to figure out everything I had to do by myself. I wasn't able to like ask anyone or like ask my mom, okay, what was school like for you and stuff like that because it's completely different
Hmm.
over here. And I feel like I almost resented them because of that because I feel like I missed out on opportunities. Meanwhile, my friends already knew these things because their parents pushed it on them. I don't know. It's like having immigrant parents, you just have to come into the situation knowing they're not going to know nothing because you're the first to experience it.
Yeah.
And it's like it got very annoying very quickly that I wasn't able to confide in them in anything, but they would always ask me questions, even to like help them like fix the internet or fix a printer because some texts were different. Everything would just annoy me anytime they were asking me a question, because once again, I'm just a kid. I'm just 12. Why are you asking me how to fix this, how to do this? Taxes. They even asked me one time, like, how to, I said, why? I don't learn this in class. This is not, there is no how to do taxes 101. And it's just like, I very much resented my parents in times that they would always look at me as if I was just like all knowledgeable being of America and what to do here, because there was no one else they could look at. Like,
Yeah.
yes, they can ask my uncles and aunts, but they always had that thing of like pride of like, oh, we can't ask for help either.
Right.
So yeah, there was that. I just resented the fact that they kept on
Hmm.
looking at me for every answer at every age and turning point in my life, and I still don't know how to do taxes. So hopefully they figure that out.
Yeah, it's interesting because my dad, he came to the US at 17. But
Oh.
not every African man is willing to be questioned. So it was one of those things where you've gone through FAFSA, you've gone to college here, but don't ask me no questions because I don't remember and I don't want to explain. So for that
Same.
reason, I was with my mom, and my mom
Yeah.
said, "Oh my God, I don't know how to do these things, please." So there's this thing my school had, and I was so grateful where we went to UT and they taught us how to apply, certain things to expect as you go off
Hmm.
into college. So that's what now helped me learn what I need to do to prepare for college. But what really hit me was when I got to college and I didn't understand the concept of bills. Like, I actually have to work. Like, okay, I cannot ask my mom for $100 every week. Being the first daughter, I had to tell myself, your mom has helped you out enough. Your dad,
Hmm.
he's done what he could. It's time for you to grow up. And so I
Yeah.
had to have that hustler mindset. Ended up getting my farm tech license in college. Ended up working. I was working at least 15 to 20 hours, paying rent, paying for my food, my groceries. At one point, it got so bad I had to file for food stamps. My parents didn't understand all of this. I didn't even know it was through a friend, and now told me, "Oh, see if you qualify." So, like Ekenem said, there's so many things I had to learn as I went along. Like the
Hmm.
idea of opening up a credit card to build my credit. I did
Mhm.
that as a sophomore in college. Had I waited, I wouldn't have had any credit. But there are things that I would wish my parents told me so I didn't have to suffer first and learn later. But at the
Yeah.
same time, there's that joy in being able to figure it out yourself. But then when I go and meet my Oibo coworkers, their parents have laid everything just smooth for
Yeah.
them. They've had all these things in line for them. And then we have to come in and be the first of immigrant parents and figure it out. Don't make any mistake, oh. And that was my thing. If I'm going to be the first of something in the home, allow me to make those errors. But it was like,
Hmm.
even though you're the first, do your research. Make sure there's no, I don't want any problem. So that really made me hustle hard, ask all the right questions so that I can finish. It's good and bad, but you don't want to always have that hustling mentality. Sometimes you need to rest. Sometimes you need to relax. Sometimes it's okay to make errors because errors is how you learn. Of course, if it's not detrimental, right? But that just be my take. I wish African parents that do know more about the American system would have a one-on-one with their child. Like, do this, don't do that. I may not be able to give you money or open a credit line for you or a 529 account, but at least let me share my experiences with you so I can prepare you. That's what I would have appreciated.
Yeah. Yeah, those are great points. And I think I was definitely lucky in that my mom was pretty good about being proactive about telling me a lot of these things, however she learned it or however she knew it from like living in the US, especially when it came to like financial things. But one of you at one point mentioned just like your parents being willing to ask for help. And like maybe that is not as big of a thing with some immigrant parents. And I don't know the reasons why, like,
Pride. That's the
like
answer.
but
That's it.
whatever it is, like why it's so hard. And now I'm looking at myself and I'm like, dang, I also really struggle to ask for
hmm
help. And like it's something I've been noticing more in the past year and it's like so annoying and I'm like, how do I get over this? But that is an issue because when you don't ask for help, it's what leads to this continue to happen. Like you having to figure out things on your own because you didn't ask somebody who maybe knew. And yeah, I think that's just interesting.
Mhm. It's like, I don't know, I find it funny. Like for me, I know there's a thing where you're hyper independent and then there's a thing where you're prideful. But for me, I'm both. So it's always funny.
Oh Lord.
It's always like, and when I'm in a job interview and they ask me, what's your biggest weakness? I'm just like, my ability to ask for help is
Right.
very low. But I realized in time, I don't want to be like my parents. And I realize it's more beneficial that I can learn from others and it's not embarrassing to ask for help.
Yeah.
And that's just something I'm also learning with that.
I agree. And I'll piggyback and say sometimes it's not always pride, you know. I think our parents have really had a hard time with trusting, like
True.
just trust issues. So they're afraid that if they're
Mm,
vulnerable with someone, it gets used against them.
That's
So
true.
they keep their guards up, and that
hmm
closes up, doors of opportunities. But I've learned in this small life of my own, because I'm still young, that when you ask questions, the amount of information you get, even if the person takes your wahala and tells somebody else, the amount of help you get, it's amazing. And sometimes you have to know who to ask, and what information to share, but the help you receive, it saves you that trouble of feeling like, oh man, how am I going to get this answer? That stress of thinking of how will I get there when you could have just asked your neighbor, okay, how do I solve this problem? And I'm learning that as I go, especially as I enter into the corporate world, it's okay. You just need to know how much to share and when to
mm.
share it. And these days that we have AI, there's no need to even be having all this, interactions when I can just go and Google it and they'll tell me the answer. So that's what I'm learning.
Yeah, it's a great point and something that is like harder to unpack when you're still young and like watching your parents as they process and learn. It's just like they may just struggle with trusting,
Hmm.
which can be caused by a lot of things. So, we've been talking a lot about the hardships and the struggles and all the negative things.
Mhm.
So, like, up until this point, and we mentioned like healing is a journey, it's a path, but how have you guys been able to heal from these past experiences, and how are you working through these things that you're struggling with now? What has helped you as well?
For me, I know that my healing journey started literally 3 weeks before I went to college because me and my parents got into a big argument right before I left to college. Like, it just started off with my mom yelling at me about how she wants to create these last memories with me and help me shop for college. And I was literally telling her, I already ordered everything online and it's being shipped there. Like, you don't got to do nothing because I already had this mindset they can't help me anyway because they always like expect me to get everything done.
Hmm.
And so she was yelling at me. And then my dad walked in from the front door, didn't even know what we were arguing about, hopped on my mom's side without even knowing the conversation. And then they started tag teaming me. And then I was just like sitting there shaking and boiling up. And I just snapped at them. I was going to let them know how I feel right before I left. Because once I leave, I mean, they're in Houston. I'm in Dallas. That's a 5-hour drive. You can't catch me.
Oh my
You
god.
can't catch me. I did not care that I still had 2 more weeks with them in that house. I need to let them know how I felt. And ever since that conversation, my parents are a lot better. I feel like I'm actually starting to learn about who my parents were because I feel like I did not know them for 18 years of
Hmm.
my life. I feel like I know them now. I feel like they're more honest with me. I feel like they
Hmm.
give me more advice and we actually make jokes now and laugh about things. And I'm able to also confide in them now
Hmm.
when I felt like before I couldn't. I felt like they kind of just saw me as a robot. And now they actually see me as a human being with feelings and like there's more to life than like me pursuing life to go to medical school. Like now they actually see me as, oh, did you go out with your friends? Like, how's this club org you're in? Like, I feel like my healing journey definitely needed to start with that argument blow up and all of
Hmm.
us just like letting our feelings out on the table and everything like that. So I feel like I'm more healed now that my parents and I have somewhat an actual relationship with each other. And I feel like now that I have a relationship with my parents, I can now go into life and build better friendships or better relationships with people. And yeah.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you. Only difference for me, I think, is boundaries. I've learned to set them, and I'm still working on it. And I think my healing started maybe a year and a half ago of just learning that it's okay to let them figure it out. Like, you don't have to be the one to provide the answer or the solution or be the solution. And now I can have those one on one with my mom and tell her, look, I know it might be hard for you, but what you said and did, I didn't really like it. Can we talk about that? And one thing that I've learned is you can have an honest conversation with someone without being disrespectful. And
Mm-hmm.
when you can talk in that calm voice, they're actually able to listen to you because they don't feel like you're attacking them. And that's an approach that I've used with my mom, with my dad, with my siblings. And it helps because it shows that you are responsible enough, you're mature enough to have a conversation about somebody else's faults without being a tigress or without yelling. So that's been in place and it's still a work in progress, especially since I have kids now and, they're grandparents and it's a whole different thing with
Mm.
grandparents and their grandkids. But boundaries. And it's good because when you have those conversations with your parents and you let them know where they went wrong, and you're respectful about it, they actually do make an effort most times to try and remember that so that they can't do it again. Because believe it or not, your parents want their relationship. They just don't know how. And they're like, okay, well, I don't want to step on her toes, but I also want to know if it's okay. Sometimes my mom will come and say, I don't know if this is okay, but like I appreciate her trying to let me know she's uncomfortable, but she still wants to talk about it. And that starts with me, setting those boundaries and welcoming that conversation and that healing because if I just say, you know what, I'm tired of you, I don't want to discuss, then where would I heal? Where will we go from here? So it's really helped to set boundaries.
For sure. With the whole learning how to talk to people, I feel like I realized we even with our parents, the trigger too is I'm pretty sure their parents were yelling at them like days on end. And I realized it's also a trigger for me that when people raise their voice at me, I turn into that whole screaming match with them. And we have that whole belief who's louder is winning the conversation. And I realize now when I'm talking to people, I don't even know, like, I turn into a conversation. I don't like to argue with people. I will talk
Mm.
to you in a soft tone throughout the whole time a person is
That's
arguing with
good.
me so they can learn to, like, you need to understand that this is not a fighting match. Whatever trigger you had with your parents, that's not me. And I'm learning to do that with people because it
That's
helps
awesome.
myself and it also helps the next person I'm talking to, like, let them know, like, this isn't a screaming match. This is a simple conversation. This is not an argument. It doesn't have to be. It heals
Yeah.
everybody. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because it seems like for both of you, conversations has been part of the healing.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe
Yeah.
y'all are not conflict avoidant like me, but I think like I'm getting to the conversations. But what I had to do first was get in therapy. Like,
You gotta do what you have to do to get
Yeah.
that help.
and especially when you just have never like verbally processed things, I think it kind of forces you to because you're just there to talk. And so once you start like verbally processing things, you can like better understand how you feel about them and like how it's causing you to act in certain ways. Because a lot of people, I think, who maybe had harder relationships with their parents growing up would just cut them off, especially when they get to college or
Yeah.
100%.
like once they move out. That's
Yeah.
just what they do to fix the issue, is like not fixing the issue, right? But now that they're independent, they can just do whatever they want. But in reality, they are your parents. They are in your life forever in some capacity. And so, like, being able to confront the issues or start mentioning when things upset you or bother you. And I
Mm-hmm.
think you kind of find that as you get older, your parents are also getting older and they are growing in their own way. It's like a joke that people say, "Oh, it wasn't until," especially like immigrants, like it wasn't until I moved out of the house my parents started saying I love you, but like low key. That was so true. Like I never like suddenly like I'm in college and people are saying I love you. I was like, wow, this never happened before. And I don't even think it was intentional. Like maybe they just didn't grow up. It wasn't like a word that was used,
Mhm.
even though they do love us and they show that in other ways. But that started happening. Sometimes I would get an I'm sorry. I was like, wow,
Yep.
leaps and bounds here. So it's cool to see that, like, yeah, in their own way, they're also growing and like what you were saying, Amaka, like having conversations with them, being able to say things in a way that is still respectful, but you're being honest and giving them an opportunity to know how you feel, because really they can't read our minds if it wasn't already obvious. And
Mm-hmm.
in some ways they don't even know, like when you were talking about your experience, Ekenem, being honest with your parents,
Mhm.
some of those things they probably didn't even know. They were like, we didn't know what we were doing was making you feel that way
Oh,
or
yeah.
that you were reacting in a certain way. And obviously it's hard for you to share that with them because you are the child and like there's a power,
Dynamic, yeah.
yeah, dynamic there. But like that also opens their eyes, which is really cool. And then just forgiveness, I think like,
Yeah,
Yes.
forgiveness goes a long way for sure.
yeah, when you get the I'm sorry, but even when you don't, like just to be able to have peace within yourself and to like have some sort of relationship with your parents, it comes to a point of just accepting like this is how they are based on their own experiences and upbringing and like their own situation. And I can respect that. But then, like you said, you can also have boundaries so that it is a relationship that is still healthy for
Mm-hmm.
you, whatever that looks like. But the boundaries are hard because they are your parents at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, is there anything you wish you could tell your parents, or what you already said to hold them accountable?
Yeah, I think it's just now I just hold them accountable when they say certain things to me that trigger me. I like let them know immediately when I know in the past I would either just be silent and go up to my room. Like I was never grounded growing up because my room was my sanctuary. You can I would be there anyway. Like it there wasn't really much they could do to punish me because it's like I've learned the whole silent cry. Like I know how to like be by myself with my emotions and be depressed or whatever
Mm,
what they did to me. But now I always hold them accountable now. And I feel like my whole life I try to live life with no regrets. So
Mhm.
yeah. I feel like I'm doing well so far.
I think it's different for me because if I could go back, I've always been very vocal. I've always told people how I feel. But you know what I didn't do? I was always disrespectful about it. Like
mm,
loud,
Real.
angry, wanting to fight. Nobody's going to listen to you, especially as a child, trying to talk to your parents in an angry voice. I wish if I could go back, I would have talked to them in a more. And I know, of course, I'm a child. You're going to have moments where you just get upset. But there were some times where I could have really just calmed down and say, Dad, Mom, this thing that you did, it really hurt me and it's really affecting the way I think. And really having them see you in your vulnerable states instead of like punching a wall or running away and not wanting to talk about it. Because if I did that then, it may or may not have been solved. Everybody's different, but they would have known about it and they would have been more receptive if I was also respectful about the way I delivered how I felt. And and I know our parents, people say like, oh, they're your parents, they ought to know. Our parents are learning. They're human beings and they're dealing with their own traumas. And it
Mhm.
wasn't until I got older that I realized that I have to give my parents grace. It's now my dad in his old age that he's like, wow, okay, I love my daughter. I love my kids. I didn't hear that for before, but you
mm,
starting to recognize, man, life is but a vapor. Like it goes away quick. And I wish I could go back and spend more time with them. And so I feel bad, because they didn't really think about that. And now that reality is setting in. So they're human beings as well. And I think giving them grace and also being forgiving. I wish I was more forgiving earlier on because I wouldn't have been such an angry child. But
Mhm.
now, like that forgiveness, it gives me so much peace. It helps me, get through my day, not let the things happen as a child determine the trajectory for my life. That's what I'm gonna do from now on. Is just forgive, not forget, because you can't forget everything, but forgive and intentionally make an effort to try to move forward. That's where I'm at.
It's like now that I think about it, I would like to go back and change my answer actually. I don't think there was anything I could tell my past self to do, to be honest. I generally think throughout this like whole time of growing up, like you were saying, I feel like our parents were growing too. I feel like if I held them accountable at the ripe age of 14, they would just be like, I'm right anyway. I'm the parent,
Yep.
whatever. I just feel like they were raised in a household where the parents believed they were right all the time.
Hmm.
So they went into raising us and believing we're right
mm,
all the time. And especially being in a whole new country, they thought they were Superman because they brought their children to America, or I gave birth to a child in America and I'm putting them through this America school system and stuff like that. I just generally think in their head they were the superhero because of everything that they went through and what they did to get to this point in life. So I generally just think no matter what I could have did, because I feel like when I was younger I tried, and even then they weren't hearing it. I feel like me going off to college, I feel like it was in that moment they realized they could lose me in this
Yeah.
moment, because I'm pretty sure I was one of those close to cutting off their parents cold turkey the minute I went off to college. Like I was about to be one of those kids, and my parents literally felt it that day because even my dad was crying after that argument. And my dad
mm,
doesn't cry, so I think in that moment them seeing I could actually leave while I'm in this whole different city, and me being 18 and them being older, watching me grow up, I think we all just needed to grow. I don't think anything in my past self could have done to like help that situation with me and my parents. It just needed to happen at the time that it did.
Love that.
Yeah, I think that was a great point you made about just how your parents have also grown to a point where you can now have these conversations, and you probably being older makes a difference. Like
Mhm.
before you were a minor living in their house and it's kind of like my
Mhm.
rules, it's my house. But once you leave, the dynamic changes to a certain extent.
Mm,
So I think that is a good point. And so yeah, I think now, especially as someone who was more conflict avoidant growing up, now I know that it's better to talk about things instead of just brushing them under the rug, because that breeds resentment, which doesn't help your relationship with your parents, with your siblings, like with anyone. And I think just the things we were already saying, like just how you kind of feel this undue pressure growing up, and it just feels unfair in a sense because like you didn't ask for these special responsibilities outside of what is natural, and it can be hard to it's hard to sustain, like it's not sustainable. And eventually, like just like any other human, like you're going to fail, you're going to disappoint them, and life goes on, you know? But at the time it doesn't necessarily feel that way. Yeah. So those are things I need to work on. Is just like being able to verbalize things more.
and it's day by day, right?
Yeah.
It's not overnight. You have to give yourself grace because these are years of trauma. It doesn't, even me, there are certain things you think by now as a married woman, as a mother, that I would have recovered from. But no, it's a daily thing, it's a constant thing. And it's okay because no one's perfect. And we have that ability as long as we're alive to try and do better each and every day. And that's all that matters. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So what advice would y'all give someone who is struggling with this, who's like, "Oh dang, like I actually feel a lot of similar things that they have said. What do I do about it?"
For me, I feel like definitely either therapy or journaling. I know for me, what's helped me the most is so for me, it's like I don't have a podcast, but I do have a Snapchat where full of like just women, and I just rant on there. And when I rant on there, people like comment or swipe up and they like realize they relate, and then you feel like you're just not alone in these things. Because I
Hmm.
feel like we really do like to internalize our pain and make us feel like, oh, it's me versus the world, when actually there's a
Right.
lot of people that understand what you're going through. And
Yeah.
it almost makes life easier knowing that someone relates to you. So once you start journaling and realizing, okay, this is wrong, you're able to like look at that and fix it. You can flip it and you can turn it into a positive situation. Like, even though I went through this eldest daughter syndrome and I'm still going through it, I do see the pros and cons in it. I don't see just cons anymore.
Hmm.
Like, I
Right.
definitely see the pros and positives and how it's impacted my life in a good way. And this is coming from a person that I used to see the world very negatively all the time. And I feel like I'm a very more positive person now for it, now that I've started journaling and doing this whole rant thing on the Snapchat full of women and that understand what I'm going through.
I agree. I love that. I think I wouldn't change anything you said. The only thing I would add is just love on yourself more. You know,
Hmm.
think about you first. Because if you can't think about you, and I know this is very cliche, if you can't love on you, how could you really provide that same love and support to others? When you neglect yourself, it
Yeah.
may not show up then, it's going to show up later. And it's going to show up in the worst of ways most times, either through a breakdown, something happens in school, something goes wrong, you're not yourself. There's so many things that we could avoid if we could just take time and love on ourselves. More
Mhm.
self care. It's not bad. It's not selfish. And sometimes you have to be selfish. I've had to tell myself, it's okay. Before you answer that text message of complaining, what have you done for yourself today? before you answer that call that's gonna have require a lot of responsibilities from you,
Mm.
what have you done to serve yourself today and to take care of you first? And now that I'm doing that, I'm getting better. I'm healing. Before I grew up in a way where I had to respond quickly. Somebody's in the hospital, we're rushing. We're leaving the house right now. We have to go. But I never had a time to just take my time. So no, something that I've started doing. It may sound bad to some people, but I take my time to respond to texts or calls. I allow myself the ability to process things so that it forces me to slow my mind and respond when I'm mentally ready, when I'm mentally available, rather than being everybody's counselor.
Mm.
If somebody needs a counselor, they should go out and find one. I can't provide that because I'm human too, right?
Mm.
That's where I'm at. I cannot help you. I can guide you and say, look, this person, I've heard of this company, they're good with therapists. Please go find it. Of course, I can give you assistance and I can talk to you and give you advice, but trying to force ourselves to suddenly be the hero for everyone is impossible. Please, just love on yourself. Take care of you first, and everything else is going to work out as long as you set the right boundaries.
Yeah, I love all that advice you guys shared. And I think it's so true. Like, first, talk to someone about it. Don't feel like you're alone in it. Because clearly, like, as we have seen, it's a shared experience. And it's so
Yep.
crazy because we all grew up together, but we first had this conversation, like, what, a few months ago? Like, that was the
Yes.
first time that we
Yep.
actually, like, talked about this. And we were like, dang. So we were, it
Look
was
at
like
the
that.
eyes.
It was. It was like that Spider-Man meme where they're like pointing guns at each other and they're all wearing the
Yep.
same outfit. It
Right.
was like, dang, like you went through that and we never talked. Like what?
Mm-hmm.
Which is insane. But it helps so much just to process and know like other people have experienced this. What are things that have helped them? What are things that have worked for them? Which is why I really wanted to do
Mhm.
this episode with you guys. And then, like you were saying, Amaka, being mindful of just like where you are and your bandwidth and your capacity to like answer a phone call or like have a discussion or do whatever because you kind of always feel like you need to be giving and like you said that hero mindset or like a savior mentality like oh I have to do something or else this is not
Mm-hmm.
going to be fixed and it's like at the end of the day you don't like some people some things you just have to commit to God in prayer because like nothing you say is going to fix it
Gonna
or
change
change it
it.
or
Right.
anything so like some things you just have to let go and let God and just be like, I'm here, but like I'm not gonna put the burden on myself because it can be really stressful. Like it can cause you more anxiety and stress that you don't realize just like underlying because you're worried about things that you can't fix, that you can't change realistically, but you've just been put in this position where you feel like you have to be the one to do that. So yeah, just knowing what your boundaries are, what your bandwidth is, knowing that you don't have to do things right then and there like you can take your time and like it's better for you to have a conversation with someone when you have the emotional capacity versus when you're already drained and you know that
Yeah.
it's just going to drain you more. So yeah, I totally agree with that. And like now this is making me think, is there anything y'all wish you could tell your siblings?
I would tell them, please don't look at me as a mom. I love you so much. And if my sister or my brother ever listens to this, I'm so sorry if you felt like you could not relate with me because I was always the second mom and not sister.
Mm.
That's something that I struggle with a lot that my siblings don't want to come to me. They see me as a parent rather than their sister. And if I could go back, I would try to make them realize that I'm here. We're all siblings. I'm not your mom or your dad, I'm your sister. Because you want to create that loving environment of you can come to me, we can laugh about it. Like for my siblings, most of the time we get together for trauma. Like, did you hear what your mom did? Girl, your dad is just We should be able to get together outside of other things besides trauma. But because we grew up of she's the oldest, she's also our second mom, I'm not telling her. My brother and my sister will
Mm.
communicate. So I wish I just could go back and tell them, look, I don't want this job. Trust me. And please
Yeah.
talk to me. Let me know what's going on. If there's anything I can do better, please tell me. That way they don't feel alone because I've had one-on-ones with my sister and my brother, and you'd be surprised what they have to say about what you did to them. And I'm like, huh? How? But it's
Hmm.
because they saw you in this different light. You had this whole different job that they just couldn't comprehend as a child. And it made them close the door to ever having a relationship with you as a sibling. So that's what I would change. But at the same time, it's like a healing process. I'm working on it. I'm giving my siblings room to grow. I'm staying out of their business more because they're my sibling, not my child. And
Hmm.
I had to learn that because my brother's like, bro, why are you acting like my mom? And at first I used to be like, why are you saying that? Like, I'm trying to help you. But the reality is, I'm acting like his mother. Like, I got to let him live a little, let him make his
Yeah.
own mistakes. And then when something happens and he needs my help, he will come to me. And then I can provide a response as a sister, not a response as, you must do this because I'm not his mom.
Yeah.
So that's what I would change.
I feel like for me, like I said, me and my brother weren't raised in the same household until I was like age 15, 16.
Hmm.
But I did know, like, we knew about each other, but it's just more along the lines. I feel like there was a little bit of a wall with us in the beginning because I felt like he thought I had it good
Hmm.
and I thought he had it good because he didn't have to deal with my parents. So I realized at the time he was going through this whole eldest son thing
Yeah.
syndrome with my dad, and I was just going through this eldest daughter thing with me and my parents. There was like a day I grabbed him and we were just both sitting down. We were so honest with each other, and we're just like, we both have it bad. And it was in that moment both like related to each other and things got better between us. So it's just more of just being more honest with each other about both of our parents want us to be this overachieving thing. And we can just achieve together and talk to each other about certain things and just learn that we're not alone in all of this. Once again, I just
Hmm.
feel like finding people you relate to, it just makes things so much easier. It's almost like that part of your brain that's always spinning and turning all the time about this one situation, it just goes silent. I know I'm an overthinker, so it's just like I feel like things are always going crazy in my head. And I just love knowing that when I find people I can relate to about certain traumas or anything, it kind of shuts that part of my brain down and leaves room for the other things that are going on in my life. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. And I feel like for me, I think thankfully, like, I do think my ability to have conversations with my brothers has improved as we've gotten older and, like, yeah, be more honest with each other. Cause, yeah, I think when you feel this internal pressure to be perfect, how do you think other people perceive you? It's like, oh, well, that's the golden child. She does everything
Yep.
right.
Yep.
And it's like, that was never the intention. That was never what you were trying to do. That's how it can be painted. So just being able to have honest conversations with them. And it's like, siblings are just so interesting because they're the only people basically that experience everything you experience. Like, they're the only people that experience your childhood in a similar way, and your childhood has like a huge impact on you. And so you are all dealing to some extent with the same issues, the
Hmm.
same traumas and stuff, but you're just like maybe are not talking about it until you're older and you're able to like actually reflect. And like they are going to go through the rest of your life with you in some capacity. So yeah, just being able to like have that relationship as siblings, because like you were saying, Amaka, you can't be their second mother and their sister. Like you can't do both,
Right.
even though like sometimes our parents feel like, oh, like you are both, you have this interesting intermediate role. Like it's like, no, like either
Yeah.
I'm one or I'm the other. And
Yep.
like if I'm now their second mother, then they no longer have a sister, and that is an important role that only I can play, and now I can't play that role, you know.
Exactly.
So it's like giving yourself permission, and also like just being able to say to my parents like, yeah, I'm not going to say that because I'm not their parent, you know, like that's just it.
That's you. You
Yeah.
handle that.
And like you said, like they're not going to confide in you in the same way anymore if they know that you are just like a third parent. So yeah, just being able to be honest with your siblings too about that. Yeah, and knowing that like at the end of the day, like y'all are on the same team, you know, like we're here to have each other's backs. Yeah, I think that really helps. Is there anything else y'all wanted to share on this topic that you haven't gotten a chance to?
It's like, are y'all also a therapist friend? Or
Right.
Oh no.
because I am, but I'm also learning that with being the therapist friend, you can't always expect people to be the therapist for you, or at least not resent people for not
Hmm.
doing as much as you do for them. Like, I don't know. It's like
Right.
I learned a while back ago. I feel like I'm superwoman to people sometimes. I feel like I do have almost this like angel like complex with people sometimes. And then I expect it from people and then I get disappointed because my
Hmm.
expectations are so high
Same.
from what I do. And then that makes me disappointed in people. And I shouldn't, because I honestly shouldn't expect that much from people. I don't
That's deep.
Yeah.
know.
I do have that problem trying to be everybody's mom again. Um and the problem that it brings is, at least for me, every time I try to give advice, I learned that I'm not really an active listener. I'm always talking and talking. And I
Hmm.
can talk and talk. And a person, they only shared one line of their trauma or their issue. And I've given them 10-minute sermon. And so, you know, and so I've had to learn to really relax and listen. And sometimes you don't have to provide the paragraph. It may just be one line of, where do we go from here? And let that person talk to you about what they're thinking, and then you can guide them. I wouldn't do this, but I would do this. But then again, it's your choice. I'm here to support you. Instead
Hmm.
of you trying to be the one guiding them and telling them you have to do this, it can be exhausting, because then if you spend all that time and they do nothing you said, you're like, wow, I wasted my time. But if you guide them and you say, look, I'm here to support you. If it was me, I would do this. Then you know that you've given them that room, that autonomy to make their own decision. And you don't get mad if they didn't follow it. So that's kind of what I do. And then that expectance, oh, you better work on it now. Because if you don't, when you get married, it's going to follow you. It's
Oh
bad.
no.
Just because you do something for someone
Hmm.
and you're the type of person, you will light up the room. You will do, in fact, you'll get the Caribbeans, everybody to come and dance for the birthday. That doesn't mean somebody else is going to do that. It
Yeah.
may not even be in that person's capacity, but it doesn't mean that they don't love you.
Hmm.
It's just, to them, that's big. And you have to get comfortable with what somebody can do for you. It doesn't have to match what you can do, because if everybody was the same, there'll be no need for a relationship, because why am I marrying the same person like myself? I need to marry somebody that complements me, that's
Hmm.
okay, similar to me, but also has those different things that I like. Even with your friend group, yeah, you're gonna have friends that are like you, but they also have differences. And that's what makes y'all grow stronger, because they can point out those areas where you need to grow. So just learning to let somebody grow. Don't be too expectant. Be appreciative of whatever they can offer you. If there's areas where you feel like you're giving too much, let them know. Hey, I always feel like I'm on the giving end and I'm never on the receiving end. Can we work on that? What's going on? And see how they respond. If they're like, my friend, I'm always helping to. If they can't take accountability, cut it off. We're already firstborn daughters. We don't need extra stress. So that's 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 what I was saying. That's where I'm going.
Yeah. We have a
Yeah.
lot going on.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, that's such great advice because I too feel like I am that friend. Oh my gosh, what's happening? And it's like it's hard because on one end, I do just like being there for people. I like giving advice. Clearly, that's what I do
Mhm.
on this podcast. Right? Like you like feeling like you're helping people. And I am that person, and I am working on this. Is like if you tell me you have an issue, I'm like, okay, how can we fix it? Like,
Right.
let's try this, let's do this. What about this? Like you just want to get to that point of like it being fixed, and that's just not the reality of things. But yeah, what you were saying, because like at the end of the day, we are not perfect people. We're not a saint. We're not Jesus. If I'm so giving to you in some ways, like I'm also wanting that to be reciprocated when I need it. And if you do not show up in that way, it can like make you upset and it can make you feel like, what is this friendship? And we kind of talked about that in the friendship episode. But what you're saying is true. Like that was never what they signed on the friendship agreement, that they have to be exactly like you in this way to you. Like they are
Yeah.
doing what they can do in their capacity as your friend,
Mhm.
assuming that they are a good friend, but it just may look different and you have to be okay with that. Yeah, I think that's something I've also been learning, like accepting love, like the way people show you
Yeah.
love, even if that looks different, because that just leads to a more happy life.
Mhm.
Yep. I
And
agree.
it's like also with that, yes, we give so much, but we're also expecting a lot. But we're also sometimes too independent or prideful to ask for things back as well. Like we honestly
Yeah.
do sit pretty and expect. I guess the energy to be reciprocated back tenfold.
Read my
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah,
Like,
read it.
I don't want to say nothing. Just know it. Hmm.
You should know if I already gave you ABC, you should also give me ABC as well. And I feel like I can't have that mindset anymore. Like you were saying, I have to just accept what is giving. Not like I'm settling. I just feel like I'm now learning that you can't force people to be the image in your head. Like they're gonna do
Right.
what they want. This is not even a teaching moment either. There's no obedience class on how to be the perfect friend for me. Like I'm never gonna force a person to do that. So
yeah.
it's just now I'm like really sitting with myself and realizing if that's not what I want from a person, it's either I cut them off or I learn this is just who they are and they're doing the best that they can. That's
Yep.
that. That's really
And
all
be
you can.
okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This has been great. It's shown me where I've healed, and where I need to still heal, because it's tough. It is
Yeah.
tough. It doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter if you are, specific ethnicity. It doesn't matter because the experience is the same. The pressure is the same. You just have to give yourself grace. And if you do that, life gets so much better. Even in your dating life, in your personal life, in your social life, it gets better because you love yourself more and you're more understanding of everything else around you. And you learn to not crash when things are not perfect. That's what's helped me the most. Is learning that things don't have to be perfect for me to be happy. I need to learn how to be
Hmm.
content with my current circumstance or situation and just understand that it may not be where I want it to be, but eventually I'm working towards it and it'll get there. And even if it doesn't, as long as I've given my best, that's all that matters. So I think that's what I want everyone to understand as a firstborn daughter. It's okay, girl. Don't stress.
Yeah. And like what you're saying, it carries over like the negative impacts, it carries over into other parts of your life. Like what Ekenem brought up about friendships and then what you're saying about marriage. It will come back up
Hmm.
in some way if you don't address it. And you kind of already started talking about this, Amaka, but how have things changed for you now that you've been able to process how being the eldest daughter impacted you growing up? You've been able to start healing from things and like address things and have those conversations.
It's like I also want to have a question for you about like what is it like being an eldest daughter married?
Hey, God, it's a lot. So,
Yeah.
um, for Kenem's first question, before marriage, I dated my husband for about 2 to 3 years, I think. So it's like 7 years in total. Girl, I'm losing count. But he really pointed out some things that I didn't pay attention to. And I was looking at him like, look at this small boy. He doesn't even know me. He over here trying to tell me stuff I need to work on. But as I got married, I started to realize, wow, I have zero boundaries. Like everyone thinks they can come to me for everything. And it was when I got married that I recognized, wow, life will be so much easier if I just said no. If I
Hmm.
just said, I can't do it right now, but I can get to it this time. Or instead of saying, I can do all of it, being able to tell them I can do some of it.
Hmm.
Being married has helped me realize that your partner is going to need you just as much as your family needs you. And you're going to have to determine who am I willing to make a more of a sacrifice for. Remember, when you get married, it's not your mama, your siblings anymore, your daddy. It's not this your husband that you're trying to grow with, that you're trying to start a family with. And he's not worried about all the traumas you went through. Yes, he's going to try to support you, but what are you doing now? And that's what I really want to drive home. You cannot be going on 30 saying, this thing that my parents did to me it has affected me, or I cannot move on. Like, at some point, you're going to have to be like, okay, this happened to me. What am I doing about it?
Hmm.
So that's where I'm at, and it has helped me. I am healing. I think right now, of course, I still have things to work on, but I am like in the best space right now
Hmm.
because I'm not giving 110% anymore. I'm
Yeah.
doing what I can do. I'm allowing them to figure stuff out by themselves while I love them from a distance. And
Yeah.
when I need to step up close and really hold them, I do. But not all the time because if I do that, what will I have for my family? What will
Yeah.
I have for myself? So that's that. The second question that can about how it is like being married and being the eldest daughter. Oh my goodness, it's not fun because it's like your siblings and your parents will be like, Amaka did all these things. now that she's married, I hope her husband is ready to join her. That is not how it works. And that assumption that your husband is just going to hop on the bandwagon and help, provide more help. No, it's incorrect. And I think they had that thinking going in. And thank God my husband is a no nonsense guy. So he's like, we're not doing this. We gotta have boundaries. And he loves him, I love him, but we have to have boundaries. And that's where we're at now. So they understand, okay, Amaka has a family now. I think it's time we give her a break. And I love that because it lets me know that I've done enough to let them know that they can't just waltz in and be like, I need you, step away. There's respect there, there's boundaries. And it makes me want to help out more because now I see that you're caring enough to know, okay, she has a lot going on. Let me give her some time to think about this. Let me not make myself the most important factor. Because before, when I tell you, and especially when I first got married, my parents lived 10 minutes from me. Worst mistake. Every little thing. I'm like, I'm just gonna drive in. I'm just gonna if you can just come downstairs, just bring it, all the time. You have to break that. It's like break it. I'm telling you, because you have to allow yourself to grow and be away from your family. That's why most times you see like some of these African dads, they'll be crying when their first daughter's getting married because they're not gonna have that tie anymore. That ability to just call on you anytime. And that's why you should never let your husband be the person that comes in and picks up the load again. It should end with you so you can move on, live your life, support your family where you can, but not carry everybody on your back. Otherwise, something's going to crash and it's going to be what you really want to stand, which is your family, like your husband, your children, that will end up taking the hard fall because you're more worried about your siblings and your parents. So please remember what I'm saying. Don't call me tomorrow and say, Amaka, I wish I listened. You better listen now. Pay attention. Set those boundaries now. So that when you get married, your husband doesn't have to be stressed because his wife is constantly leaving, being stressed about somebody else's family and not her immediate family. Of course, they're still your family, but they're not
Yeah.
your immediate family now. Your immediate family, when you get married, becomes your husband and your children. It's a hard concept to grasp. It is a very important one. So that's my advice. I hope y'all take it because I'm not going to listen to, oh, I wish I don't know. I said it. So please make sure you listen. That's all I have to say.
No, that's great advice. And I think like you're just being honest. You don't realize, especially when you just have that personality of being someone who's giving, you don't realize how it can come back around and bite you in the future if you don't figure
Yeah.
out how to put up boundaries. But the same question to you as well, Ekenem. How have things changed for you now?
I feel like the biggest thing I've learned is saying no and boundaries and learning that I don't have to do all of these things for people because like what I was saying earlier with the whole I was expecting everything from people because I was giving so much of people that would always lead to constant disappointment because of my high expectations on people. So I had to learn how to say no to giving as much because I
Right.
know that person's not going to do anything for me. And
Mm.
then also learning that I got to just do things for myself and not for others and just like learning more peace for myself. I'm now a person that fully says I value my peace. Don't stress me out to people. I got enough going on. Like I go into that with friendships, relationship with guys, my parents. I'm like, don't stress me out. I do A, B, and C. It's either you bring me peace or you don't.
Yeah,
And
step
I'll know
in.
where to put you in a
Right.
category in my life. So it's stuff
Right.
like I'm glad that I'm able to categorize people. Like
Yeah.
I feel like as
Very
bad as that
important.
sounds, you need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am truly so grateful for this conversation. It was so healing to be a part of and to listen back on all the gems my cousins shared. If you're an eldest daughter, I hope you feel less alone, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on our conversation. If you have an older sister, I hope this episode helps you understand them a bit better, and would also love to hear about your experiences. You can reach me via Instagram at the Making Space Podcast, where you should also follow for more content. Please rate or review the podcast and follow the show wherever you listen so you never miss an upload. Also, share this episode with someone who would benefit from hearing our conversation. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode of Making Space. Bye!